Alright, so it's late in the nighttime, but I promised I'd redo the After Effects tutorial because the one I did for class didn't turn out that great. So this tutorial is just going to go over basically how to recompose clips that you get captured from InfWorks or clips that you capture from Rhino and Grasshopper, and then bring it into After Effects and start putting some simple and basic effects such as text and other things. And we're also going to do camera tracking as well. Before I start the After Effects tutorial, I'm going to show that previously what I did was over here on my desktop I have saved out 3 clips. These came straight from InfWorks, and I exported them as raw, uncompressed file formats. So this first clip here is just the city I chose is San Francisco. I have a San Francisco InfWorks model that I just have on hand, and this is a clip of just a general flyover of the Bay Area at a fairly tight field of view. So just a simple flyover. The next clip is a sun path animation. So just very basic like that. Then the last clip will be a bit more of a wide angle fly through, and this is the time we're starting out in the hilly area of Sausalito, and then moving towards downtown San Francisco, kind of stopping at the bridge. So these are clips that I exported from InfWorks at 30 frames per second at 720p resolution, and since they're uncompressed, the file sizes for these 3 clips are pretty big. This one's 2 gigabytes, this one is 1 gigabyte, and this one here is 2 gigabytes as well. So they're really big files, and it's just something that we have to deal with when we're exporting raw footage out of programs like this. But in After Effects, after we compose everything together and then export that new video out, then you can just simply delete your raw files in order to save hard drive space. So again, in After Effects, this is the interface that you would normally see upon opening After Effects. You have a composition window here, you have a timeline here, and you have a project assets browser right over here. So these 3 work areas are the most important parts of your animation. So the first thing you always want to do when you do a project is you want to bring in assets in the project browser here, and you just do that by right-clicking in here. Import. You can either do one file using just this or multiple files using this. And since we're having 3 clips, we'll just click on that. And these clips were saved on my desktop, SFV1, SFV2, SFV3. So we'll click these guys and import. And if there are options, just click OK to the default options, but there they are. And then we're done with that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually make 3 compositions. When I say 3 compositions, I mean basically a composition for each of these clips, because we're going to do some effects to each of these clips individually, and then we're going to put these 3 compositions into a master composition, and that's going to be the one that we're going to ultimately render out. So the way we make a composition for each of these clips is very simple. All you need to do is simply drag it into your composition window like this. And what you see here is that actually when you do that, a new file or a new item pops up in the project browser here. It's a composition here. This is not a video, this is a composition. This is basically a video clip in a timeline and all the effects you add to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to, we made a composition, let's close out of it. And then, sorry, I shouldn't have closed that. We should open the, where's the browser? Okay. So another way you can do this is to simply just right-click on the clip that you want to turn to a composition and just say New Comp from Selection. So we'll do that for all 3 clips, New Comp from Selection for all these 3. And now basically we have 3 down here. You see SFV1, SFV2, SFV3. This allows us to work with them individually. And then what we'll do is we'll create a master composition with all these together at once. So actually I'll do that right now just to set it up first. So then we'll right click this guy and click New Composition. And this is what we're going to end up rendering out. And we'll call this Final Animation. And then this is where you simply set your settings. So right now you can set to a preset option here. Since all these clips were at 720p resolution, we'll simply do an HDTV 720p resolution right here at 29.97. I don't know why I actually don't know why it's this number here. We just do a plain even 30 frames per second, which is good. And then the length of the composition will be a minute. So just 1, 0, 0. Background color doesn't really matter. I generally think black is a good color to work with. And then when this is all good, just click OK. So now we have final animation as a composition, and then we have 3 other compositions to put into this final composition. So I'll see what you can do here. Basically, what we'll do is we'll take SFV1, and then we'll bring it into the timeline like that. If you hold Shift, you can snap it to the time, the end and start. We'll bring SFV2 into the timeline here, and we'll hold Shift just to have it come in that way. And do SFV3. Just shift drag it like that. And like I showed you guys last time, what might end up happening is this clip will end up being shorter than a minute. So there's an easy way just to trim it, is just to drag this slider right here like that and hold Shift so that it snaps. Then right click on top of it and say trim comp to work area. And now this basically trims the composition to basically the length of the clips you have here. And actually, since I'm gonna end up doing it, I'll overlap these compositions together so that we might trim it again later. But the point of this is now that essentially when we make edits SFV1, this composition here, it will automatically update this timeline here. It basically makes it so that we can work within each of these clips individually and then not have to have a messy timeline for the master composition in the end. It's just a workflow thing, but you can obviously just drag in each of these raw clips into one composition, and you'll probably still be perfectly fine with that. We're just going to close this font animation for now, but if you ever want to see it again, just double click it and you'll get back into it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a camera tracking to start off the clip here. And the reason why the last time I did it in class, camera tracking didn't quite work is I guess just some clips just don't have the right pixel makeup to allow it to work pretty well. So I actually did this test last night, and this particular clip we see right here of this flyover of San Francisco doesn't camera track very well at all. But this clip that right here, where it's flying over the mountains and then zooming into the Golden Gate Bridge, actually does camera track fine. So honestly, I'm not quite sure why some clips work and some clips don't. You just might have to do some trial and error and see which ones you get good results of. But we'll do this clip here since I know this one actually does camera track fine. So the way you camera track is simply you select your clip, go to Effect, or rather Animation, and then click on Track Camera. And what it's doing right now is, I just drag this effect here, is you can see over here in the top left corner, it's actually, what it's doing is basically analyzing each frame as we speak, and then basically aligning pixels so that it knows where the camera is, and also figuring out the field of view angle. So I'm going to pause the video, but we'll get back when this is finished. Okay, so now we're back, and it took about 1 minute to actually camera track this guy. But now if we scrub through this video, you see all these dots and how they're basically moving through the space. This is essentially the camera tracking effect that we wanted to achieve with this this animation. And so these dots are basically points in 3D space, and they know where they are, and you've essentially created a 3D environment now. So whenever you create a 3D environment in After Effects like this, you want to start by creating some objects in the space and also creating a 3D camera. And the way we do that is if we move the mouse over the clip here, you see this little bullseye symbol essentially. If you click and drag your bullseye symbol like this, you see you're selecting some of these little tracking points. And then if you right click on the area that you selected, you see you have these options here in terms of creating text in camera, create solid in camera, create null in camera. Start with this guy, create solid in camera. Now what this does, if we click out of this area here, and actually right now if you if you want to see the points, I just clicked out off of that off that space here. If you want to get back to tracking points, just click on the 3D camera tracking effect in the clip that you tracked, and then you can click on these options here, render track points. If you do this, basically when you render the animation, these track points will be visible, so you don't want to have this checked. But you can adjust the track point size by moving this slider here to make it a bit smaller. You can adjust the target size, which is the size of your bullseye, by sliding this guy here. But we're going to click out of that just by clicking on a different layer. But you see now, you just essentially, those points that you selected, you've created a solid in that space. And if you scrub through the video now, you see that solid is essentially moving according to the 3D tracking of the camera. So this is just proof that the camera tracking actually works. When you create a solid, it's just basically a shape in space. It's just essentially a reference shape. And to show what this means is actually, let's create a few more solids. So let's go back to our camera tracking points, and then let's say, let's create some a solid out here in the marina area of Sausalito. So just again, drag and select several points like that. Right click, and now that since we already have a 3D camera in our timeline here, all you do is create a solid. You don't get the option to create a camera anymore. You can only get one camera. So let's create a few solids. Let's create one solid out there. Let's create a solid right in the Bay, San Francisco Bay Area River. Create solid. Again, these are not meant to be. These are just meant to be reference planes that we can look at, and just to evaluate if the camera tracking worked correctly. Maybe let's create one, this little small little valley right here. Okay. And what you can also do is actually very useful is, instead of creating a solid, just create a null. And what a null is just basically a dumb object. If you click on one of these guys here and then right click it, you can create a solid, or you can also create a null. All this is just basically, if we select off of this, just a little square. It's just a little object. It doesn't actually have any physical properties whatsoever, but it's just kind of a thing that you can use to visualize tracking. But as you can see, as I scrub through this video now, you have all these planes, and they're following the path of the camera perfectly. So all the elements in the distance work perfectly. All the elements in the foreground are working perfectly. What you can do now is you can change the 3D view of this guy by clicking on this tab right here, and you can go to top view here. And it's kind of hard to see. What you can do is you can use the middle mouse button to zoom out and in. These four shapes right here, these are shapes that we made earlier. They're just kind of sitting outside of the workspace area. And this is our camera, our track camera. And if you click that guy, you can actually see the path that it's moving on. So now you can kind of see this is the camera path as it moves through the space, and these are the objects. You have top view, you have a front view, you have a left view, a right view, and a bottom view. So this is how you can begin to align things like vector plans, text objects, other things like that into one composition using reference objects, particularly like these solids or these nulls, and then you can compose it together. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, let's scrub to kind of a midpoint here. Let's create a cool title block that kind of comes in around this point here, and then we basically fly through the space and kind of create this cool, interesting 3D effect with the text. So right around here, I'm going to, move the slider right there. I turned off all the tracking solids and all the nulls just for now. And we're going to create a text box by clicking the horizontal type tool right up here. And I'm just going to, for a reason, and whatever. We'll just create a title block like that. And then I will increase the text size a bit using this character panel right here, and we'll change it to a cool font such as Helvetica. If I have it, yeah, I got FT Pro. Let's do 57, 65 medium. That's a pretty nice font. And we'll just type in San. Oh, that's huge. Let's decrease the font size a bit. So I should make it all caps. San Francisco. Okay. So now you have your text block here, and you can move it around. Everything's fine. But right now, what the thing is that this text box block exists in 2D space, which is fine. Maybe you want to have a text block that exists in 2D space, and then you can animate it just sitting there like that. That might be kind of nice in certain compositions. It's your choice artistically. To turn this text box into a 3D shape that would move with the camera, you need to go to your timeline here, and you need to check this box right here, this little cube here, 3D layer. If you check this box right here, it's gonna, see what's happening now is it's basically realigning itself to be within a 3D space right now, and it moved back in the 3D space a bit. So, but you can see right now what's happening is that this text block is in fact moving with the camera. So I want this text block to come in a little bit closer to this, where the camera is right here. Right now it's a bit too far, so we need to move it forward. And if you click on an object, you see you have this RGB widget here that you can use to move things object forward, back, or forward, left, right, backward. In this case, we actually want to move it closer to us, which is this green, or this blue area right here. So you're going to need to hold that blue area, which is the Z guy. Oops, the Z, and then if you click and drag, you see it comes forward a bit. And then it's a bit too high, so just bring it down like this. Bring it forward. It's a bit awkward, but it's something you just got to work with, and then just kind of move it around using the widget here. You can also, conversely, you can go to, say, a top view here, and you see it's right over here. That's a text box. You can move it the same way using the widget that way. So we'll go back to our active camera and zoom in here. And if we now fly through here, you see that the text now is moving with 3D space, and that's pretty cool. Maybe around here we want this to kind of like fill in the top area here, so let's move it right in the middle like that. So that's a pretty cool effect that we just created right there like that. You want to be careful not to overdo the 3D text, but this is just a cool effect that we can use and compose with the animation here. What I'm going to do is also, you can take this text here and you can add some effects to it just by right-clicking on the text box here and add effects this way. Let's say we want to add a drop shadow to this guy, because right now it's a white text on a fairly light background. It'd be nice to have basically a drop shadow behind it just to make it more visible. So if you go to effects, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it should be somewhere in the, let's see, I can't remember where it's located. Simulation, stylize, there's some effects here, but that's not it. Perspective, yeah, here it is. In the perspective tab here, you can drop shadow. So I'll click on drop shadow, and you see it adds a cool little drop shadow behind it, so it makes the text a little bit easier to read. And then of course you can just change the direction of the shadow. Since we're kind of under it, we want the shadow to also be kind of low, and increase the distance a bit maybe. Maybe increase the opacity so it's a little bit darker. Maybe let's do something like that. Increase the softness a bit. And now you see that you have basically a cool 3D text right there like that. You can also, what we can do is we can take this text here and we can animate it to move or change opacity. So let's say we want this text to kind of start to fade in around here, or maybe let's set it to fade in around here. So before this spot here, maybe at the 3-second mark, it will be invisible. So just simply go to click on your San Francisco layer in your timeline, go to transform, and then go to opacity, keyframe, here, there's a little stopwatch. Click on the stopwatch to set a keyframe, which is a little triangle right here, or this little diamond shape. And then we'll when you're on that diamond shape, you want to move the slider to 0%. That sets the opacity at that point to 0%. So everywhere, right now, everything is 0% because those are only one keyframe. But let's say the half-second mark, we set another keyframe by hitting the diamond right here like that. And then change it to 100%. So now it comes in, fades into view like this. Maybe let's make it more gradual. Let's say it fades in and then reaches 100% passing right here. All you need to do is click on the keyframe and drag it like that. So now it slowly fades in. Comes in like that. Then we fly through it. Then what we can also do is we can add a blur effect to this as well. Let's say we want it to start blurring when it gets to around this point, kind of creating a depth of field effect when things fly closer. So what we can do is right click on the San Francisco layer and add a blur effect right here. So let's do a Gaussian blur like that. And you can see the Gaussian blur comes up in your effects controls right here, blurriness. And you see right next to blurriness, there's in fact a stopwatch right there. So that means you can set a keyframe for your effects at different times. So right now we want it to be sharp for pretty much the entire animation up until about here when it starts to get out of view. So we'll set a keyframe for blurriness right there by hitting the stopwatch. You see down here in your San Francisco timeline, you've essentially set a blurriness keyframe right there. And then we'll just simply, around this point, blur it out. It doesn't really matter because it's off the frame, that's the point. And we will just simply increase the blurriness to something really blurry like that. I'm just dragging and sliding it over. So what's happening is that as it comes close, it just gets blurry. So it adds kind of a cool cinematic effect that way. Maybe we want to say it starts getting blurry a little bit earlier. Maybe we can move this guy a little bit like that. So this is kind of an artistic choice you can choose. So this San Francisco label is kind of flying in and going out like that. So it's kind of a cool effect. Okay, so that's one way to add some cool text to your animation. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add some cool labels on this guy in addition to what we have here. If we look at a map of Golden Gate Bridge, this area here, this is kind of the area that we're animating. What I want to do is I want to add some cool labels to indicate several features that we are flying over in this animation. So if we scrub through this guy here after we pass through San Francisco, like that, the label is San Francisco. There's this little valley here that we might want to label as an interesting landmark. There's another interesting valley here that we might want to label. Obviously the Golden Gate Bridge you want to label as well. And perhaps also downtown San Francisco as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Illustrator. And what I did here is that I created essentially a simple diagram that we're going to bring into After Effects as an asset, a vector asset. Actually, what I'm doing is I'm going to give this a nice artistic font. I rather like Adobe Calcin Pro italic font here. Anyway, besides the point, what we're going to do is I'm going to look at this map here of Golden Gate Bridge Park, and we're going to see that this area here is the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. This is probably a camping ground right here, so we'll call this Golden Gate National Recreation Area. It's probably, I can't see the text. Let's increase the text box size a bit. Recreation. Make sure spelling is correct. Bring it down. And when we bring Illustrator assets into After Effects, it's going to basically bring the asset in as the same size as the artboard in Illustrator. So we want to actually just kind of make the artboard as tight as possible around our actual features. It'll make it easier in the long run to when we start to compose this into the animation. like that. Okay, so then we're going to take this asset that we just created. Maybe actually, you know, this is simply artistic choices here. Maybe give the curve a nice the arrow a nice curve here. Maybe give the arrow a dashed look to it. Maybe increase the dash line width. These are just artistic choices I'm making here. Maybe decrease the gap to something a bit more manageable. Maybe let's take this text here and justify it to the right instead. Anyway, artistic choices, whatever you want. Okay, so this all looks good. Then we'll save as. I'll save it on my desktop as a label 1. Replace, sure. Okay. So this is all good. So we'll just minimize the Illustrator window for now. And we're back into After Effects. This is the same exact clip that we used with the camera tracking clip right there. And what we'll do is we'll go back to our project browser. You can just click on a tab right here to bring that in. Before I do anything else, I'm actually going to clean up my workspace. Reset animation. There we go. I just resetted my workspace just to make it a little bit cleaner. Actually, I'll just reset it to standard. Actually, I should have done that. Animation. Okay, whatever. Okay, anyway, we're back to our composition window here. And to bring in a asset from Illustrator, just right click, import file, and then we want to import the label 1 asset, import. So now it's in there. It's not just a label, it's just a vector art piece, and we can bring this into our document. And we want this to basically label this area here in the animation. I believe, let me see this real quick. I can make this fit. So just drag it into your video. And you see that it's right now a 2D asset, so it doesn't actually follow the 3D view here. So you want to click on the sky and then again click on the little cube checkbox right there. So now it is now a 3D asset. So now you see this is how you can start to bring features and edit them into After Effects. So right now we want this arrow to kind of point at this region here, and it's kind of hard to tell where it is. So this is where I'm going to turn off the thing real quick and go back to our 3D tracking points in the camera tracker. This is where setting things like a box actually helps. And if I'm not mistaken, I already made one for the area. Yeah, this little green box right here. So we'll just leave that on. So like so. So what we'll do is I'll turn on leave this green box on right here. I'll turn on my label right here, and then we'll go into one of the other viewports, say the front view here. Actually, I'll turn off this San Francisco label here. I'm just gonna make sure that this this feature here aligns with the box area. So let's do that. Then let's go to the left view here. If you click on the label in the timeline, this is where it is, and you see the box is right there like that. And you kind of see this box is at a different angle than this here. So actually, when you rotate this guy to match that angle, just to make it work. So the way we do that is you can rotate it by clicking on this rotate button up here, and you can pick the axis that you want to rotate on. So in this case, we want to rotate around the red axis or the X. So just hover over it until you see your icon turn to X, and then you can rotate like that. So let's just make it so it's kind of perpendicular to the green plane right there. And then let's move it down so it's touching it. Then move it over so it's kind of above it like that. So now the green plane is right here, you see that, and our icon's right there. So now we're just working it until it aligns well. So now right there, it's like that. So let's just move it over like that a bit. Maybe let's rotate it so that it's aligned with it on the y-axis. So go to another view, so back view. This looks pretty good. Right view looks pretty good. Let's go back to the active camera view and see what we got here. That's looking pretty good right now, actually. You kind of see that it is following the perspective pretty nicely. And I see here what happened was that because I rotated it to match the perspective of this box here, it actually feels kind of skewed over there. So actually I might just, in this case, well, I see it actually should be fine. The one thing about this label, as you can see, is it's a bit high. It might be nicer if this label was a bit lower, closer to this shape here. So what you can do, and this is actually pretty cool, if I turn off that box, is you can go back to Illustrator, and as long as your artboard is the same exact scale, you can change this guy. So I'll just like resize this label down here like that. And if I'm looking at this, maybe the text needs to actually be a bit bolder. It's a bit hard to read with this little fancy, really swishly looking font. So we'll make it a nice Helvetica. Give a nice bold Helvetica, like 67 medium, maybe 75 bold. And let's just increase the size like that. Then save it. And if you go back to After Effects, this should just automatically update. Oops. So did it save? Let's save it again. Save. Oh, there we go. Yeah, just zoom in and out. But now you see, like, it basically the size of the asset has not changed, but the stuff inside the asset has adjusted accordingly. So now we have a nice label here. Now at this point, all you need to do is just basically just mess with the graphics until it reads well. So this red against this green background, a little hard to read. Maybe in this case, we might go to the video here and add a color saturation effect. So right click it here, effect, color correction, and we might just do hue saturation on this guy and turn down the saturation a bit, and maybe turn up the lightness a bit, like that, of the overall video, just to make it so that I actually can read the text. So what I did in the last minute was I made a few more labels to add this guy. So we have this label here. What we'll do is we add another label for this area here. I'll import multiple files. I created 2 more labels, label 2 and label 3. Import, done. Label 2, it's labeling this area here, which is Kirby Cove. So we'll just drag it to kind of the area that it should be at, and then we'll click on the 3D layer here. We'll find where it is. It kind of moved back there, so we need to move it over to where this should be. Kind of get it like situated kind of where it should be, and then we'll just adjust it later. I don't know if I created a tracking solid for that area. Let's just double check real quick. I don't think I did. We'll just go back here, click on camera tracker, zoom into this area here, and we'll just create a quick, select a couple of these circles here, and we'll create a solid right there, like that. It's right here. Let's move it down a bit. And then we'll go into the top view. And let's click on label 2 to see where we're at. It's right over here, and then the track solid that we just made was right over there. So these two things are kind of out of sync. So let's move this guy over that way. Move it down like that. I know the tip of the arrow was kind of in the lower left-hand corner, so we'll just kind of move it so it's kind of in the middle of that square, like so. Let's check it out in the active camera again to see where we're at. Active camera. Oh, there it is. It's kind of not quite, so we'll have to continue working it. So let's go to the left view here. Label 2, San Francisco solid. It looks right. Might need to rotate it a bit. So before I showed you how to rotate it using the tool right there, you can also rotate it using the transform panel down here. So if we want to know, if we don't want to rotate around the x-axis. Just drag on the x-axis parameter down there. Let's move it up and over like that. Let's go to the top view and see where we're at. So this label looks okay. Let's go to the back view. That looks okay. The right view, that looks okay. This should be fine. Let's check it out what we got here. Oh, I see what I did. Actually, I aligned it to be along the lower left, but actually the arrow is pointing to the lower right, so I actually move it over like that. And that should work pretty fine. That works pretty well, actually. Okay, so that wasn't too hard to do. Let's turn off that solid. You know, and that solid is just a guide. You know, after you're done with it, just delete it. In fact, all these solids here, I don't really need anymore, so I'll just delete. You can always make more solids later if you need them. So we have Golden Gate National Recreation Area. You have Kirby Cove. The last guy is Golden Gate Bridge right here. I want to align it along this guy right there, this little area right there. So let's turn on our tracking points. And let's try to get some, so you see the circle here actually follows the plane along the points that it overlaps. So we want to actually have a vertical plane of these guys right there, sort of. Let's see if we can create, yeah, that's nice. We created a vertical plane, so let's create solid. Now I have a nice vertical plane that we can align another label to that. So what we'll do is we have a plane there. Let's bring in our third label, label 3. Golden Gate Bridge with an arrow pointing out like that. Make it 3D. It's probably going to just throw itself, yeah, right in the middle. So actually I'm just going to go straight to top view. Like so. The label is right, it's there, and we want to move it to that solid there. So this selection to that selection. It's kind of a far away move, but it should be fine. So let's just make sure I have our widget selected. Let's move it over there. Kind of get it situated sort of there. Let's rotate it so that it's facing us. So with it rotated around the Y axis, so let's go to the transform, Y rotation, like so. Let's move it over like that, so it's kind of in the middle. Let's go to a left view to see where we're at. So this label is right here, but our solid's right there, so we need to move it up. This might be a good chance actually to see where we're at in terms of the camera. It's kind of weird. Maybe let's actually work it in the 3D view a bit. Let's rotate it along this axis. Let's rotate it along this axis. Move it down a bit. That works pretty well, actually. I might make the label a bit smaller, so I'll do that right now. I have a label right here. The label doesn't really need to be this arcing this high. So we want the Golden Gate Bridge to still be there. So we might need to basically cut that curve in half in terms of its height. So I'll just take this curve here and just bring it down like that. Bring Golden Gate Bridge. I'm going to do something cool like this. As a label, save it. Go to After Effects, you can see it immediately changes. We can delete the initial track solid because it's done its job. We don't need it anymore. Maybe move this over a bit, like so. Now you see we have cool map animation with a bunch of locations marked, and it's kind of dynamically moving along with the rest of the camera. Maybe the San Francisco actually also needs to be pink, but whatever. So that's pretty cool. And then the last thing we'll do is we can animate these arrows here to move into the spot that they are marking. So what we'll do is actually we'll animate each of these labels very quick. I know this video has turned out to be quite long, so bear with me. You can always skip through and skip to the good parts. But what we'll do is we take this arrow here, and let's say we want after the San Francisco fades out, it to kind of drop in to where it's currently located. So the transform actually should a cool trick you can do with this drop-in effect. So we want the Golden Gate National Recreation Area to be at its final location right around there. This feels like a good spot where this is kind of the most legible. So we'll click on the position, the position keyframe right there, and then we'll move it back to around here. And we'll click another, make another keyframe right there, and then we'll just move it up using the y-axis. Just keep moving up. Until it's out of the frame. There we go. So now what's happening is that when you come in, it kind of plops in like that. If I render this little segment right there, you can kind of see how it feels. Not render, preview. So to preview a specific area of your animation, you just kind of trim your work area, or not trim it, but kind of like drag your work area to the area you want to preview, and then go to your preview window right here and just click on play. You kind of see it pop in like that. Now right now the animation is actually very straight and very linear, so it kind of feels weird. You can actually give it a bit of an easy ease to it. And the way you do that is you click on the keyframe that you want to ease and right click it, and then the keyframe assistant, there's a tool called Easy Ease. Interesting enough. Click on Easy Ease for the start and click on Easy Ease for the end. And then if we preview that again, you kind of see it's very subtle, but it actually slows down a bit before it reaches its final destination. This is actually a much nicer animation effect to work with. So I'm going to just do this for the other two parts. Okay, so I've took the last 2 minutes just to set that up. So now if we preview the whole thing that we have so far, you see that we have labels popping in and they're following the camera, so it's kind of cool looking. So then we'll just go back. Oh, and here's a little problem. You see when I move them up, the labels that are going to pop in are still kind of existing within the upper frame of the area there. So what we have to do for that is just to do a bit of cleanup. So let's work with the first clip right here. We want to basically make this this label invisible. We can do that just by dragging the clip so that it doesn't actually have any existence. It's still there actually. Okay, we'll do this. We'll do this instead. What we'll do is we'll right click. Actually, sorry, I clicked the wrong label. Label 1, yeah. So we click on label 1 and we drag this there. Now it doesn't exist at the area, but still after that point, all the keyframes and all the animations that we used are still there. So we'll do that instead. So this label 2 shouldn't come into focus until around here. So that fixes that problem. So that comes in. This comes in. The last clip doesn't have that problem because what I did actually was I added an opacity to it, so it's actually invisible for most of the clip. But we should do the same thing with this clip. So we should just clip it so it doesn't exist for most of the animation. It helps with the rendering time actually. What I'll do, the last thing I'll do is actually just a cool effect. We'll actually animate the hue and saturation. So let's see what we got here. If I double click on hue saturation, the saturation is down. What we'll do is I want the saturation to be kind of at the normal saturation to start the video off. But then as it gets to around the point where the label begins to pop in, we will add another keyframe there, and then we'll bring the saturation down to about -50, something like that. So now it's kind of desaturating very gradually, and then there our text and items start popping in like so. And maybe around here, actually, we bring the saturation back to kind of bring the color back to the image. So I'll just click on the saturation keyframe right here, this channel range. Make a keyframe there. And make a keyframe right here. And then we'll increase the saturation back to its normal color. So basically, we've made a simple composition like this. And you can, instead of using labels for your Illustrator assets, you can also use Illustrator maps or other documents. And that's how basically I have laid. That's basically how I overlay plans and plan drawings into my animations this way. It's very simple, but very easy to do and very powerful. The last thing I'll do is just kind of a good technique is to click on this little button right here, this little star icon next to the Illustrator files. This is the continuously rasterize function. All this basically means is that when the text will always that you bring in from Illustrator will always be sharp and always be its the highest possible resolution that it should be. And this is just a good way to make sure Illustrator assets are always nice and clean looking. Okay, so now this composition is looking pretty good. Actually, what I'll do is I'll save the Illustrator, the After Effects, composition that I'm working with. And this isn't saving, it's basically saving the works that you have going on right here, but all your files are still in the same location. I'm just gonna save this on my desktop, and I'll just call this animation demo. Okay. So SFV3 is, as far as I'm concerned, a solid clip. We'll go with that. So we just click out of it in the little tab here, and then go back to our font animation here. And you see that in our composition window here, you have other clips right there, all set and fine. But the SFV3, it comes in as one single timeline layer, but all the effects that we added to it are now inside that comp. So this is a good way to essentially, compose several clips together very efficiently. So what we'll do is I'm going to create a few things. I'll do a title block, a title fade in, then we'll fade in these clips together, and then we'll just have a fade out title. So, and then we'll add some music as well. So let's just do it real quick. And this is stuff that you probably remember by this point. So what I'll do is I will actually move this initial clip over to give us a bit of a title block, and we'll just add a text block here. I'll call this urban, or rather, let me just give it again, San Francisco InfoWorks animation. Maybe for your animation, you will, say, write your name down, Franku, and then the year you're working, fall 2015. And we'll just do this real quick. So very simple. The text block right now exists over everything, so it's a bit kind of weird looking. We want this text block to only exist in the beginning animation, so we'll just drag the clip so that ends at the beginning of the first. And you actually want this text to kind of like fade in naturally. So again, just go to transform, opacity, make a keyframe, set to 0%. Sorry, 0. Then at the midpoint of there, we might make it 100%. And actually, let's actually extend it out over a bit of the first animation. And then the first clip, we'll shift drag it over. Maybe let's do this. Might be nice to kind of put the the sun shade animation first because it's static. Yeah, actually we do that. Actually, we can actually even leave the text kind of in the image while this is happening. So let's fade in the first clip. Opacity, set 0 first. Bring it in. Set it to 100. Maybe right-click this guy and easy ease it, so that the fade in is a bit natural looking. Maybe you want this title block to last a bit longer, so we'll just extend this. Add a bit like that. Maybe let's just have it across the entire guy like that. Let's hit fade in, then fade out right about there. So add a keyframe to mark the time when it's solid, then add a keyframe to mark the time when it goes away. 0%. So San Francisco InfoWorks animation. Maybe not the best timing, but whatever. Okay. So now we have this guy here, and this is going to fade out right about there when the sun sets. So again, go to your opacity keyframe, add a keyframe there. Shift, drag it to the end there. Add another keyframe, set it to 0%. Next clip will kind of set near the beginning of the fade, like that. So you kind of see it's kind of natural. Maybe for this next clip here, we don't want any of this blue stuff on the side. So what we'll do is actually we'll scale it. So we'll scale it. Let's go to the scale keyframe there. And we'll hit the scale button. Well, actually, we'll scale it first to hold shift. It's going to pixelate, but that's fine. Then we'll scale. I scaled it first, and then I'm going to hit a keyframe like that to set it, and then it's going to scale in because as it gets closer, it's less of a problem. If that makes any sense. Maybe here we'll scale it in a bit more. Okay, and then around here we'll fade out. So right there we'll go opacity, shift drag to the end, opacity 0%. So now if we scrub through this guy, it's scaling in, fading out. Go to our last clip here. This last clip should actually, it should exist in the overlap between the fade out of the first clip. So we just drag this over like that. And then we have the composition that we worked on previously right there. And then we'll have this just kind of fade out. Opacity. But right there, let's start to fade out. Shift drag to the end. 0%. Okay. Then we're going to trim the work area to the. Actually, this is enough time to add an end slide, for instance. So we'll add another text block. And we'll just say, thank you for watching. And this should exist at the very end of the clip, so shift drag it to the end like that. And let's have it fade in. So again, see, I'm using the opacity tab quite often in this. Opacity 0%, drag over a bit, bring it to 100%. So now I thank for watching. And we want to fade out as well, so again, so much fading in and out. So let's add another keyframe there. Let's add another keyframe right here. Let's go back to the one at the very end. Actually, I could just double click this guy here and adjust it like this. So opacity should be 0, like that. So now it fades out. Okay, so that's good enough. So this very simply right there is a sample animation project you can do for yourself. Obviously, you might want to make more specific to your topic or your work, but this by itself is substantially good for an animation. I'd probably expect more labels and that kind of stuff to be in these kind of flyovers, but this is fine. Then when this is all set, let's add some music to the background. So let me find a track real quick. Okay, I have a track of music here. This is just a piece of music from a cool epic movie that I have from somewhere. So I just drag the track in. The track, make sure you have this little music sound symbol checked here. If you don't have that checked, the audio won't actually play. You can adjust the auto levels by dragging this guy here. I think 0 is fine. I mean, we can always just change the value in class. And also with music, you want the music to fade out at the end. So again, the audio level, this is where we need to maybe make a hit the watch right there, and then shift drag to the end, and then hit the keyframe right there, and then just drag this all the way to -48 decibels, which is basically nothing. There we go. So this is all good now. And then we're gonna render this. So I'll save this project, and then add to render queue. Make sure I just have final animation going here, and then we'll go to add to render queue. See a final animation set right there. We'll go to output, and we'll save it into on the desktop as final animation. We'll go to the output module here. Format is should be QuickTime. Format options. Make sure you click the codec H.264 right there. Video quality, maybe set it something like, I don't know, 70, 75, I don't know. Audio, give it a audio codec. I actually don't know anything about audio codecs. Let's just do AAC. I'm just shooting in the dark here. I'm not really sure which one's the best way. We just don't want it to be huge. Okay, so this is all good. Click OK. Everything else should be fine. We won't resize the video or anything like that. So click OK. So this is all good. So then we just hit render and just let it work. And so that's kind of that's pushing through it pretty fast. So I will just pause the video first, and it's done. So then we go to our desktop, and we see what we got here. Final animation right there. Let's check the file size, 300 megabytes, which is, in my opinion, a very respectable size for a video that size. I won't play it, but I'll upload the final video to YouTube so you can watch it later. But in short, this is how you would work and make your animation in After Effects. In total, what I just did for you probably took me about, I'd say 3 hours to do. That included the setup of the InfraWorks model. So a lot of the work is really setting up the model file first before you do anything else. But once you have the composition set up, it's just having fun in After Effects and just playing around with the the effects and settings you have in there. So have fun with it, and let me know if you have any other questions.